Welcome to Creators Crypt, where creators from a wide range of genres spill secrets, drop hacks, and give us just a little bit of access into their industry. Okay, so this has already gotten off. This has already gotten off to a bad start. All right, so welcome to Creators Crypt. This is my friend Dave Knighton, founder of Under the Wing Gaming. Dave is a creator of RPGs, and I'm going to go ahead and just spell that out for those that don't know. I don't know what rock they're living under, but RPG stands for role-playing game. So Dave actually introduced me. I didn't know anything. I mean, I knew what Dungeons and Dragons and things like that were, but I never actually participated. So I knew the bare minimum. And Dave, after meeting him, what was it, like 6 years ago? About?
It's been a day or two, yeah.
Yeah. Got me on a live stream with my wife and I playing a RPG My Little Pony segment, and that was my introduction into.
And it was so much fun.
RPGs. Yeah, it was so much fun.
You got to create your own little pony and gave it its own little cutie mark, and yeah, we had a blast.
I don't remember that part. I remember being stuck with things, and I'll never forgive you for the entire thing, but. So once upon a time, I thought myself a owner of a Comic-Con, and we were looking for someone to run the gaming, platform. And the guy we had clearly knew nothing about what he was doing. And Dave comes in out of the blue, and he's like, you could do this, this, and this. And I was like, you're hired. And so Dave took over our 24-hour gaming platform for that show. And it was a 4-day con. And you ran that thing for 24 hours for 4 days.
Yep. Well, not just me. I had some amazing volunteers that jumped in to help us out to run the late night shifts. So, but it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, and that's basically the kind of things that you do now. I mean, you create RPGs, but at the same time you host, how would you refer to them? Just RPG competitions, or how would you refer to those?
So we, alongside our companion company, a good friend of mine by the name of Derek Gray, he runs Rocky Mountain RPG Guild, and we reach out to conventions to help organize the specifically Dungeons and Dragons Adventurers League. And so what that entails is we work with all of the DMs, we get all the volunteers to sign up, we get together all of the adventures that we're going to run, make sure the DMs have it, make sure they have what they need, schedule out all the tables so the games are going, make sure they fire, kind of just track it throughout the convention, so however long that is. We actually just wrapped up one, SaltCon Spring, just last week. We had 30 tables and ran for 4 days. Yeah.
How many tables did we actually have running? I don't feel like it was all that many. But I mean, it was 24 hours.
It was over 20. Yeah, it was over 20, and we actually had a really good turnout. It was fun.
That was about the only successful attribute of that particular convention, but I won't go down that road. I'll start getting flashbacks.
Stressed everyone out.
So, as I was saying, everybody, unless you live under a rock, basically knows what, the role-playing games are. Now, there's some attributes to it, like we were talking just a minute ago about, like, 5G, things like that. That might be a little confusing unless you're a part of that world. So, if you're someone who's just getting in, but you want to start your own game, this is the kind of thing that we were going to talk about. So, basically, the whole point of the podcast is to give people the background information that they may not have otherwise. I would never get into special effects now, knowing what I know now.
What you know now.
So, let me have it. What's it take to build an RPG from scratch?
So, yeah, I mean, it really depends on what you're trying to do. When we say RPG, there's a couple things you kind of have to think about here, because RPG is just role-playing games. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about TTRPG, tabletop RPG? Are we talking about LARP, live-action RPG? when we start looking at like tabletop RPG, that's Dungeons and Dragons. That's, you know, Pathfinder, Starfinder, My Little Pony, Tales of Equestria. That's what you played.
Just gonna say
So,
that.
yeah, I mean, there's multitudes of tabletop RPGs that are out there, and not all of them are created equal in the sense of the mechanics or the system that they're using, you know. And so when we talk about creating one, you could talk about creating like a mechanic from scratch. You know, the mechanics are, what dice are you using, what are the rules, what's the rule set going to be, how are you going to determine this. You know, in some RPGs and some tabletop RPGs, a d20, you know, the d20 on the dice roll, if you roll 20, that's a good thing. In others, it's a bad thing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, yeah, and so that's really what it's really kind of what you have to look at. And so when creating one from scratch, we're talking going down to the mechanics and really trying to flesh out a whole new rule set is a lot. If you love math and you love statistics, you definitely want to do this. You love it. You've got all your tables spread out. What is the probability of rolling certain things? You know, what's the probability of success if you're rolling 2d6 or things like that. The other thing is you can do is find an existing system, like Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which is what is currently being used right now, widely popular. You can spin off just about any world using the open game license provided by Wizards of the Coast and kind of play in their sandbox. You can create whatever you want within, you know, as long as you're not touching their IP, you can play with just about anything you want. Game mechanics themselves can't be copyrighted. And so understanding that, back in 2000, Wizards of the Coast released the Open Gaming License. It was basically, as long as you include this, you can use our tool set, you can play within our world, there's certain spells and different things that you can use. You just have to credit that you're using the Open Gaming License. Pathfinder, which is another high fantasy TTRPG, was actually created off of D&D 3.5 edition, which was using the original OGL, that Open Game License. And so you can kind of play around with things like that, and there's other game licenses that are out there. You can play in other worlds. And so it really does come down to, when you're creating an adventure or you're creating a setting, a game setting, you know, what's the world? You can create the whole world using 5e OGL, which is an example. What I write a lot of my stuff in is using that 5th edition OGL. And so what goes into it? Well, a lot of imagination, I think, is probably the best place to start, and then staring at a blank screen.
So it's like so much more than just world building. And while that's an aspect, I mean, if you enjoy world building but you're not a mathematician, you might want to partner up with somebody who is, you know. So
yep.
Well, let me ask you this. So with all of the options out there, and I'm sort of tongue in cheek when I say this, but in, you know, the SEA world, like the Society of Creative Anachronisms, they have they have this joke that all the good characters have been taken. So have all the good games been designed at this point? I mean, is there anything worth designing, or is it, you know?
There's always something. Yeah, I mean, there's always something you can create. There's always something you can create. And if you take any existing IP, if you have enough money, you can partner up with them and roll something out. I just recently got a Cowboy Bebop tabletop RPG. So you can use other worlds that are out there. You can, or if you want to create something from scratch.
What's Cowboy Bebop? What the hell is that?
You've never heard of Cowboy Bebop?
No. Am I in trouble?
You are in trouble. Yeah.
Am I? All right. My bad.
It's one of the greatest animes ever out there.
Anime. I'm not a big follower of anime.
Yeah. All right. Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail. I just picked up one of those on Kickstarter.
Okay. That's insane that you could turn something like that into an RPG, you know. Like, I spit in your general direction. So let me think. So you can create games that are like real world. Like I think we were talking about this before. Political games. Like if you want, if it's the world of politics, and this is kind of more my speed because I've always been addicted to that stuff. But essentially your RPG takes place in Congress or whatever. You're running for office. You're trying to pass bills. Blah blah blah. You can throw dice to make sure that that not everything is easy going and stuff.
Oh yeah,
we're talking stuff like that, right?
Oh yeah, you can do anything depending upon what you want to have. There's different systems out there that would make more sense. There's some 2D20 systems that you can roll. Star Trek Adventures is a good example of that one. That's a little bit more of that diplomatic back and forth that you can have going on during the story. And you're rolling 2D20s and you're looking for those success rolls. How many successes did you have on that? And as you do different things, your game master can give you advantage or disadvantage, based on how you role play it.
So you got to pay them off.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to pay them
bring
off.
Treats anytime you have a game master.
So it really is like
treats.
politics, treats.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like politics. So I mean, sports, anything. So essentially, there is no more like stereotypical player. I mean, basically. If I remember correctly, we had a lot of people probably won't know the name Max Jenkins. He plays a young Jack Reacher in the Reacher series, and then in Lost in Space he was Will Robinson. But he was at that table every time. Yeah. If he was away from his signing table, he was at that table. So, and then there's a couple other. Henry Cavill is a big player. No, and then Joe. What the hell is Joe's last name? I think I'm going to mess
Manganiello?
it up. Manganiello, yeah.
Yes,
I would have totally tortured that.
And there's tons and tons of them. Over the last 10 years, you're seeing more and more celebrities that are coming out and supporting this. Matthew Lillard is a huge D&D fan.
What gets you fired up, or what's your favorite part about creating the games?
I think just creating the opportunities for people to get together and have fun. People to share in something that I've created and have it played the way that they want to play it at their table.
Okay, so here's the one thing I wanted to add. This is a big thing because a lot of people get into things and they don't fully understand like some of the things that would be a migraine, if they only knew, ahead of time, things that would make their head explode if they only knew before getting into. And that's kind of the aspect that I wanted to bring to this, so that people who are attempting it go in with their eyes wide open and they know that they're going to face this stuff. So what are some of the brain crushing things that go into all of this?
There's a lot. First of all, staring at that screen, staring at that blank screen is always the hardest thing. You can sit down and you've got all these great ideas, trying to put something on paper. It can really kind of knock you down, especially when you hit that writer's block type thing. But once you get going, it's pretty good. The writing aspect itself is one piece, and then there's the marketing aspect of it. And I think more than anything, the headache comes from that marketing aspect, just like anything else. The last decade has seen a massive explosion in writers and putting adventures out. The market is flooded right now, and it is difficult. And for indie creators, it can become really difficult to get your name out there, especially when you're fighting against big companies like Wizards of the Coast and Pazio and Kobold Press. There's some big names out there. So I think understanding the legalities, making sure that you're not breaking IP, playing within one system and trying to carry that over into another license that you're trying to use or things like that can be difficult.
Yeah, keeping track of that stuff seems like a bit of a nightmare.
It can be, and there's a lot to it.
And there's a possibility of flowing into it because you're not aware of that IP. You could easily flow into something that you didn't realize that you had flowed into, even if you aren't familiar. So
yeah. There's, and as long as you're staying within those open gaming licenses, and if you like specifically, like for example, Dungeons and Dragons, most of my stuff has been written using the OGL for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and there's sites out there like DM's Guild where you're allowed to write anything, almost anything. They give you specific, you can't touch this type thing, or you can stay within this world. But other than that, as long as you sell it on their site, it opens the doors up for more possibilities in that D&D realm. But of course, with that, there's a cost associated with that, and if everything you sell, they're taking a percentage of. So
what's the percentage just for their
50%?
Holy shit, 50%.
50%. Yep. Trying to make money doing it is difficult. People always complain about the cost of books and how much they cost. I mean, these physical books that you're buying, $50-$60, but when you break it down, it's not a lot of money per book that the actual writers are getting.
Oh yeah, it's the same thing with like I do nonfiction books. I mean, I get a very small percentage for all the work that I put into it. Yeah, there's always and then you don't always have control of the price. So
that's another thing too.
And they're colored books, right? So you send out a colored book and to be published, and that right there jumps it up to the $36 mark right away.
Yeah.
Even if it's 10 pages long. So are there any no-nos that people should be aware of? And I'm not talking about IPs and stuff like that you've already talked about. I'm talking about, are there no-nos in the genre, right? Or or you should not hit because gamers get pissed?
No, I think it depends on who your market is. At the end of the day, who's your target market going to be? And sometimes what might fly there might not fly in another game system or for other individuals, Anytime you start dipping your toe into some of the darker realms, more mature realms, you got to be careful. But there's other systems that are out there, like Vampire the Masquerade, if you want to dip your toe into something a little more darker and deal with a little more adult material. That's one of those.
The Red
One
Room.
of those type. Yeah, one of those types of stories that, when we do run them at conventions, they're run after hours when the kids are no longer in the gaming room, because it can it can go as far as the table will allow it to. I've seen some really dark ones go.
Dude,
so.
I don't even. Okay, so now we've derailed. We've devolved into something that I had no idea about. So, I mean, you're essentially talking about an RPG orgy in some cases, right? I mean, are we going?
We can, yeah. I mean, well, that's just it. It's like, how comfortable is the table going down that direction? How comfortable are they, acting out and role playing certain scenarios at the table?
Oh my god, I had no idea. Holy shit! I'm serious. I had no idea that they could devolve into debauchery. And
yeah.
Nice. And I don't say that in a bad way. I'm just. There's no way in hell that I could do that. I mean, even as a joke. I mean, at some point, the giggling stops, and you're like, I'm basically,
yeah. And so it really is. When you want to, what's the table comfortable with? And when you're creating these things, a lot of times you're opening it up to the game masters, who's ever running the game, to judge what the table's comfortable with.
What they're comfortable with. I mean...
Yeah, exactly. I've more times than not, try to keep it that PG level. PG-13 is kind of pushing it, especially when you're doing stuff for public. But when you're at your own table, home brewing is essentially creating your own stories for your own groups and things like that. You're just not creating it to publish and put it out there. You really are just kind of creating whatever your party wants to do.
So let me ask you this. Have you created or overseen any of these? I mean, from a first. I want to know from your point of view, from your perspective. You know,
Going down that darker direction?
No. You know what I mean. You. Yeah, I've gone down the dark road.
Yeah.
You know, I've slayed some people. No. This is
No,
seriously.
This is seriously. I mean, yeah, and if you want to, especially if you're doing something commercially, and you're trying to make it open it up to a broader market, and no is not
This is
going
the best
down that
part
road.
of this freaking episode so far, dude. I mean, I had no idea, and and I came in here as someone who is a complete. I'm not even a novice. I mean, even a novice has some, experience, and so when I came into this conversation with you, I wanted to be able to learn something, and
Yeah.
not knowing that. I mean, I knew that you could do anything with an RPG. You could basically create any kind of world, and I joke about the fact that that you could do politics and stuff and sports. I mean, sports kind of seems like it would be like right up there because of the fact of everything's chance to a certain extent, so you're rolling that dice, and determining whether you missed a swing in a baseball RPG or something, missed a swing, yeah. Anyway, I don't do sports. I just don't. But I mean, the fact that we've got this whole other aspect of it, it's kind of more than eye-opening. It's kind of, I feel like it kind of opens more avenues. I mean, you've got romantic, what is it? The old Harlequin romance. Damn, I just dated myself. The old Harlequin romance things, and that could be turned into an RPG. I had no idea. I should have, but I didn't.
I've actually played in one that was based around the Spanish telenovelas.
Oh,
you're living within one of those, like a soap opera world, and so there's
Soap
literally
operas.
a market for anything.
Dave, holy shit, man! I mean, and so do you know anybody who's kind of created any of these? Do you actually know anybody that are on the market that maybe you could throw the name out there?
Oh, I can't remember who created the telenovela one. There are so many. I swear every day I'm on Kickstarter and I'm seeing something new, a different tabletop role-playing game setting, or even a brand new mechanic. So, I definitely, have I have an entire collection of games that I've never even opened yet. It's vast. I'm always collecting a new one. I'm like, I'll get around to this. I think when writing adventures for commercial sale, one of the hardest things is keeping taking everything and kind of keeping it able to be played within a certain amount of time. So you're not just giving them a whole bunch of, you're basically writing out the blueprints for an adventure for somebody else to run at their table. And one of the hardest things, or one of the things that took me the most time to figure out how to do, was to write in a way that would meet the length of time I wanted the game to go. So, like, if I'm planning, I'm going to release this 4-hour adventure. So I know if somebody buys this, they know that they've got 4 hours worth of material that they can run at their table. And being able to pace it so that they can get that full 4 hours worth.
Oh, yeah, because I can see not paying attention to the pace and suddenly you've just done 4 hours in 2. And now you've got nothing. And so
Nothing.
I can see that. I can see that getting away from.
Or opening it up and, like, again, allowing the players to do whatever they want to do, but writing it in a way that will keep them going the direction of the story.
So you've created your story. You've worked out all the details. What are we dealing with when we hit the publishing realm, for your story? Or game. How would you actually put it? Would it be game, story,
adventure, module?
Just adventure. Okay, module.
Yeah, adventure or module. We'll go with module. I mean, I think that's probably the best way to say that, because you can release a module for any setting. Whatever game mechanic you're using. We'll stick with D&D, for example. We're releasing an adventure for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So we've made it through all of that. We've got it out there. We've got the pace down. We've got it marketed, whatever we're going to be doing, whether, whatever social media, things like that. Now we're actually publishing it. It depends on what you want to do. If you want to use IP, then your only option is to use the DM's Guild. That's specific, and it's the easiest for anyone that really wants to get into it. But then you're going through there, you're uploading it, and you're letting them push it. And I think we kind of talked about this with books before. You don't have any control over sales. There is a large cut that's taken out.
Well, even if you...
But that's really the only way that you can use that IP.
Yeah. I mean, even if you go indie, there's so many... Not
oh,
indie,
yeah. If you
independent, independent publishing,
the work
the
that goes into it. Kickstarters. Yeah. I've never done a Kickstarter. It's one of those things where I've got my own game mechanic that I started years ago. It's nowhere even close to, ready to play. But then you start looking at, okay, am I going to go Kickstarter? Am I going to go Indiegogo? How do I want to release this? There are risks that are involved with it. All the risks that come with Kickstarters. But if you're willing to look into all of that and you take that risk and that work, it's something you can do as long as you're, making sure you're pushing everything past a lawyer.
You're doing everything by yourself. I mean, even if you have a publisher, you're the one who's setting everything up. You're the one who's pushing it. And I believe nowadays, when you submit something like a query about a book that you've written or in the process of writing or what have you, you have to include a marketing plan. So it's like you're going to be doing all this shit yourself anyway. What are they left doing that they're taking 90% of the royalties?
Yeah.
You're kind of screwed if you do, and you're screwed if you don't. I'm not a publisher fan. I mean, at all. Like, I've gone down that road, and we've talked about this. My first nonfiction book, was greenlit by a publisher. Gave me X amount of time to write it. I wrote it. We made it all the way to, to the developmental stage, and we were about ready to start moving into producing it, and they pulled the plug. Just pulled the plug.
Yeah.
Because they were chicken shit, and they pulled the plug. And, I mean, I got the book back, but I don't know if this is the case for you guys. Because they changed their mind, I got them to at least give me the rights to my book back. But is that something that you guys would have to deal with? I mean, when you're writing a module, I mean, can they just shelf it?
When you're looking through what is allowed and what's not allowed, there are certain things, they've got a brand they have to protect. Again, I'm going to be using like DM's Guild and Dungeons and Dragons specifically as an example. When you put something up, if it gets flagged as too adult, or it gets flagged for, not PG, or, PG, like I said, pushing PG-13, whether that's in the story itself or even the artwork, things like that, they can get pulled down, and then you don't have any place that you can push it. So you're still working with things like that. There are some adventures that I have had where I got everything almost, I basically said, I'm going to write this. I got the greenlit to write it. Didn't get it finished or mostly done, but because that I made the commitment to it and I didn't finish it, I don't want to push it there, I can't push it anywhere else. Some of these other sites, even if you're creating your own, if you're pushing it up there, pushing it out there, and having them do the marketing campaign and taking the money and all of that, if you go through that route, you can't go anywhere else.
Gotcha.
You can only sell on this one site, and that's it.
Your hands are tied as a creative, and you can't even make money off of your own. It's hard, as if it wasn't hard enough to be in a creative industry of any. You're constantly trying to explain your value. Like, in no other career field do you need to do that. One of the other things I was going to ask you was the impact that AI might have on your industry. I just saw Adobe take a 2D image, scan it, and create a 3D, sculpture, which could then be printed. And I just about shit myself because they did it in 5 seconds. I mean, there's my
how long's
career.
that going to take you?
Yeah, exactly. And I know how long it's going to take me. It's going to take me upwards of 8 to 12 hours, and I'm fast. That freaked me out. So, like, how does this AI revolution affect you?
I think you're seeing a lot of concern in AI, especially in regards to art. That's another aspect I think a lot of people don't, wouldn't think about when they're starting to write an adventure. Is you have to have art, but I'm talking about like the physical images, the pictures that
Okay.
you have to be really careful there because there is such concern with using other people's work, and that's really what this AI thing is when you're spitting out an image that looks like it's brand new, but it's scraping other images that it's found online and it's compiling them, and then there's the legal question of whether that's right or wrong, but then there's the moral question. And as creatives, they get together and they say that's wrong. You can't do that. Big companies have gotten in trouble for it. Wizards of the Coast has gotten in trouble for that. They've gotten caught using AI generated images for not just their Dungeons and Dragons books, but for their Magic the Gathering cards as well. And
Oh, wow.
yeah. And so the AI aspect of that, it does make it easier, but is it morally right? Legally, it's a gray area. Is it morally right, though? And as a creative, all creatives know what goes into that work. We don't want to see anybody taking advantage of someone else. As far as the AI, as far as the writing side goes, AI, I don't think AI is there yet to deliver a complete, total adventure that can be run and is as clean as if a human went through and did it. But it's getting there.
From the little I know about, the role-playing game industry, it's like 100% about art. So these people put a lot of creativity into their characters and, the pieces that come with, their character or, the settings. So I feel like as a creator of the adventure, okay, and as a player of the adventure, that the creativity is so in depth that if the game in which you were playing was basically AI manufactured, I feel like they would feel like they were slighted in some way. So you were telling me about this game that you had played that was literally agreed upon that it was going to be a ChatGPT driven, AI driven, adventure. So how about telling me a little bit about that?
So yeah, that was a fun one. It was just kind of a little one-off. Played a couple sessions using this story that was written by AI, ChatGPT. The DM, she typed in a basic outline of what she wanted, and it spit out, okay, here's the premise of, and here's the backstory, and here's your bad guys, and generated locations. And it was agreed upon when we started this that everything, whatever our actions were going to be, was going to be typed into ChatGPT, and we were just going to play with whatever the consequences were that were spit out. It was fun. It was fun. It definitely throws a wrench into things sometimes when it spits out, rubber ducks as the bad guys. You're fighting all these rubber ducks, and
so is this
as far as
the free ChatGPT,
yeah,
or the upgrade?
Yep.
Okay,
this was just the free ChatGPT. Yeah, and like I said, it was fun because it was impromptu. We were playing right there. Everyone knew what we were getting into. It was definitely not something that you could commercially sell, box up, and release, because you don't know how people are going to react at the table. So when you're doing something like that, homebrew within your own group, I don't see anything wrong going down that road, as long as everyone is aware of what's going on and they agree to it. They don't want to feel cheapened, like you were saying. But for, if it's just a bunch of friends hanging around, you can do just about anything you want, like we've talked about.
like we've talked about. All right. Well, do you have any advice for, newbie creators to adventure creators getting into the industry?
Be ready to put in a lot of work. I would definitely start off with something that is already provided to you, whether you're going through Pathfinder's new ORC license, which is their Open RPG Creative license. A lot of other publishers are using that as well, so you can kind of play within other people's worlds. I would start there. I would start with something that's already created, that already has the sandbox that you can jump in and play around in. If you love D&D, jump on DM's Guild. and start reading through what's required to submit, and just buying a few adventures from other writers out there to kind of get a feel for the pacing and how things are laid out.
Well, hey, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you sharing
Yeah.
all
Thanks,
this.
Dave, for coming
secret
out
stuff.
and sharing some of the secrets hidden away in his genre. And I hope you enjoyed that conversation. And you can find more of Dave's work at www.underthewinggaming.com. I would also like to thank our producers over at Collector's Maze Network, Rixie Ray and Keith Baldwin. I would also like to thank Gil Corzo for supplying us with the theme song for our show. This episode was recorded and edited on Riverside FM.